ask for this webinar that everyone mute themselves if possible. If you have any questions during the webinar, please ask it in the chat, and I will do my best to answer it either in real time, or if not, at the very end, I'll have some Q&A time. But before we start, my name is Alma, and I would like to thank everyone for joining. I know that Talking Points has been able to help a lot of educators during this time, and I'd like to take the time to thank all of you as well for being educators and for putting in all of this effort to making sure that your students have access to all of the resources that they need. You are really the backbone of who is driving everything right now, you educators, and really thank you for taking the time to be here with us and to try and learn all of the tools that you can to help your students. If you'll give me a second, I'm just going to try and mute as many people as I can. And we have received the questions that you sent over through the quiz that we sent out. So those will be answered as well, fret not. Great. I am now going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this. If not, please make sure to send in a chat so I will be aware of that. So this is the basic of Talking Points, and I know that a lot of your questions are related to the mobile application. So today we're going to be hopefully having time to go over both. But I'm going to go over Talking Points for web first, because in my experience, using the web application to sign up is usually the easiest thing. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I obviously already have an account. Some of you probably do as well. So you would be signing in using the login page here with your email and password. But for those of you who maybe haven't signed up for accounts yet, we do have a few different ways that you can sign up for a new account with Talking Points. The first would be to sign in with Google. If your email address, whether it be school or personal, is tied to a Google account, you can simply click sign in with Google and it'll pull all of your email and information, so you don't have to do any of that sign up process yourself. You can also sign in with Facebook if that's easier, or you can sign up fresh. So that's what I'm going to do now by pressing the sign up button. We will ask for your first and last name. In this case, I'm going to put my first name, Alma Flores Perez. My students call me. So this is your signature. Whatever you set as a signature, that message will be sent to, that name will be sent to parents for every single message that they receive from you. That way they always know who it's coming from. So I'm going to set this as Miss Flores Perez for mine. Email address can be either your personal or your school email. Teachers typically like to set it with their school email so that it's tied there and it's easier to keep track of. But you can do either. In this case, I'm going to do almafp@talkingpts.org. Password, the only restrictions for the password is that it has to be 6 characters and at least 1 number. So I'm going to set my password. And your school name. We have a big database of schools and districts that we've pulled into Talking Points. So you can first try and search your school name. I am originally from Austin. Shout out to anyone joining from Austin. So I'm going to search for Austin High School, which is where I went to school. I don't see the one in Austin, so that's a perfect example. If you don't see your school listed, you can always type your own and select your own option. So you don't have to select one of the options that we have if you can't find your own. This is also really useful, I found, for teachers who work at multiple school sites. If you wanted to set Austin High School and Sanchez Elementary, which is where I went to elementary school, you can do that as well.
What did Sally say? That's it? No, she said a prayer.
Sorry, I'm muting someone. Great, I can select that option and sign me up. And again, this school information, that will only be coming from you if you send it to parents, essentially. If you type in your school name, parents will be able to see that so that they know where the message is coming from. Oh, must already have an email with this account. So that sometimes happens as well. Sometimes if you're trying to sign up for a fresh account and you have actually already signed up for an account with us, it'll tell you that the email is invalid. That really is an indication that you actually already have a Talking Points account and shouldn't sign up, but instead should log in for an account. When you get into the account, we're going to give you a few easy steps to getting started. That way you know exactly what you have to do. The first, obviously, before you can begin contacting your families is to add your contacts. So you'll press this button here, and it'll take you through a brief run through of all the different options that you have. The first option is to add contacts yourself. So you can add contacts yourself with their names, phone numbers, and languages. You can also use a Google or Excel sheet and import that. I've also created a nice help video on how to do that there. Or you can import from Google Classroom if you already have your contact information and are using Google Classroom during this remote learning time. Here, I'm going to try adding a couple students manually. So the first one will be named Jose Lopez. And you'll notice here that only the student name is actually required to add contacts. We know that sometimes you may not have access to or know the family member's name who you're adding, so that's completely optional. In this case, I'm going to leave the family member's name blank because I'm not sure what that is. Can also add the relationship. This is going to be Jose's guardian. We have a whole host of different family member relationships that you can select from. And you then select language. So I think because this is the orientation, it's being a little bit funky. So I'm going to say got it. And I can type in Spanish. We do support over 100 languages currently with Talking Points. If you don't see your language, we do have a form where you can request new languages to be added. And we typically tend to add a few languages every school year. But if there are ones that you're really passionate about, you have a ton of families, please make sure to let us know about that in the form, and we can look into adding that for you. And the phone number. And the phone number is very important, obviously, because most of the communication from Talking Points comes through SMS text messaging. So this means that families don't have to download anything, they don't have to sign up for anything, and they don't have to jump through any hoops to be able to communicate with you. As soon as you put their phone number in here, you'll be able to communicate with them automatically. The other option to adding contacts is an invite code. So if you don't know the family's phone number yet, you didn't get a chance to collect it before all this craziness happened, you can also ask them to join by this invite code. So they can join with an invite code if they download the optional Talking Points for Parents app. The app, like our texting system, is completely free. The only few benefits to the Talking Points for Parents app are a little bit cosmetic, with one really big functional one, which is a text-to-speech component. This means that any families that you have that don't have any literacy or limited literacy in their home language will be able to hear your messages read out to them by a voice in their home language. That's a great thing about the app, and that's one reason why we do encourage parents to download it if possible. But if they don't have data or Wi-Fi that they can rely on, you can automatically add them just here with the phone number and start communicating via text message. So I'm going to add this one student. Great. Completed step one. I've added my contacts. Now that I have a contact there, I can send a message. So we'll give you a nice little prompt there to send your first message. And I do see some questions about the character limit and the phone numbers. So we do have to have a phone number for using Talking Points because our system is mainly through the communication method of text messaging. Unfortunately, that is a limitation right now, but studies have found that a large variety, about 80% of families, whether they be high income or low income, do have access to basic SMS text messaging. So hopefully that'll make it at least a little bit easier and break down the barrier of having to have them have Wi-Fi. Got it. So the first step in composing your message would be to select your recipients. Give me 1 second, guys, sorry. Great. So to select your recipients, you can do a few different varieties of methods. So you can either select everyone. In this case, I only have one student added into the class, or you can select by specific classes. We will automatically create one class for you titled First Name Class, or you can select individual students and family members. Since I only have one contact at this point, it's not going to make a huge difference which one I do, but I'm going to do everyone for the sake of testing it out. We'll automatically input this kind of template sample message here, and that will be a great way to introduce this platform to your families. It'll also give them the option that they can unsubscribe if they want to, and the download link for the app if they want to do that as well. You will see, which I see some of you have been asking about as well, that we do have a 320 character limit. We had to put that in place a few years ago because of cell carrier restrictions. Because the majority of our communication happens through SMS text messaging, we were getting reports from families, especially non-English speaking families, that the translations and the messages were getting broken up by their cell carriers. Cell carriers, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, sometimes break up longer messages into smaller chunks. But unfortunately, since the cell carriers are the ones doing that, they would come in wrong orders and the translation system would get kind of thrown off by that. So in order to try and make sure that all of our messages are understandable by families, we had to limit it to 320 characters to ensure that the translation is able to work correctly. If you need to send longer messages than 320 characters, we recommend sending that and breaking it up into multiple texts and sending them out in succession. And that way, if we do it through our end, we can ensure that the messages come in the right order and that families are able to understand them completely. You'll also notice that we do have other templates that we've created for you here that you can quickly click on and send to families. But if you have a template that you know that you're going to be sending out every Monday or every Friday, you can type that out and say, "Hi families, welcome to a new week. Please remember to help your child complete the work packet for this week." And you can click on this save icon and have that message saved in there. When composing a message, you can also use these fun background colors. These will only be visible for families who are using the parent app. You can attach PDF files, images or videos, emojis, or polls. And for the images and videos, there are limitations, and those are again due to cell carrier restrictions. There are size limit files that you will be able to work with. Before the video call ends, I will make sure to point you to our resources center where you can find specific answers as to the file sizes and types of files that are supported between this information. In terms of adding polls, I know some of you have asked about adding polls. Poll works very similar to a regular text message, except obviously you need to ask a question. I know something that's been on educators' minds a lot these past few weeks is, does your family have access to internet connection at home? The option 1 can be yes, option 2 can be no, and you can add other options, maybe like not consistently. And when you send that poll, families will be prompted to text, like, when you book an appointment, like 1 for confirm, 2 for cancel. Families will be prompted to text 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for not consistently. And so they'll be able to answer that whether or not they're using the Talking Points for Parent app or not. I know that some of you have also been asking about scheduling messages, and the answer is yes. So you can schedule messages. There When you go to send, you'll see that there are two options here. The first is send, and that'll immediately send out the message and make sure that families get it. The second is schedule, and this is super helpful if you're doing lesson planning over the weekend and don't want to have to remember to send out this message at the very beginning of Monday. So you can schedule that automatically. Click on the time. I want this to go out, I think, today at around lunchtime. Great. And once that's set, I can click on the schedule button and the message will be scheduled. So now that we've composed our first message, and here is a nice little pop-up from our other team member, Nancy, giving you some more information on the things that Talking can help you do. So two-way translated messages, simple to use, private and secure, and that's a great point. So all of these messages that you're sending out to families will never come from your personal phone number. You'll notice when you signed up that we didn't ask for that information. All those messages will come from phone numbers that we pay for through our cell carriers. So your phone numbers are always completely private, and you'll never have to share that information out with families if you choose not to. And you as a teacher can access Talking Points on both the web and the mobile app, which I'll go through later. So since we just scheduled our first message, we haven't actually sent anything out. You'll notice that everything looks pretty empty. So here, this is your class feed. Once you have message sent out, that will appear here, and your class feed will show you all the messages that go out to classes or everyone in your contacts list, as opposed to these individual messages that are over here. Give me 1 second. Please, everyone mute your audio if you can.
Dime, mamá.
1 second, everyone. I'm having a hard time muting them. Please, if you have your audio on, try and mute that.
Mute?
Sí, está en Puerto Rico. Sí.
A. Gomez, 509. I see that you have your sound on. Can you please mute that if possible? It's not allowing me to. Thank you.
Del sobrino es febrero 5, 1979. Porque tiene la...
Great. So you'll also see, sorry about that, that you do have a message scheduled here in the scheduled message bucket. This is the poll that I just scheduled to go out. And you'll see that you have a few different options when messages are scheduled. The first is to edit and cancel it. And the last is to send now. So if I decide that I actually don't want to wait for this message to go out tomorrow, I want to send it now, I can press that button. Are you sure you want to send it? I am, and I can send it now. And that's a good point, that once that message has been sent, once any messages have been sent through Talking Points, we often get the question, hey, I accidentally sent this message in error. I didn't mean to. Different families got it. Can I bring it back? Unfortunately, because all of our messaging is instant and families receive those messages through text messaging, we can't delete those once they've gone out. So we do ask that you please make sure that your recipients and your message body are all correct before you send it out. And I do have a question that asks about the poll answers. So the number that I added was actually my Talking Points phone. So I'm going to go ahead and respond to this poll using the Talking Points for Parents app and say that this Jose's family does not have consistent access to internet. So as soon as families start responding, you'll be able to see the percentage of responses here. And if you click on it, you'll be able to see exactly which families responded what option. You can obviously screenshot this and keep track for yourself of the responses there. These individual message threads will also show you all of the information for this particular student and their family. You can also, in this thread, message those families individually. So I'm going to say, thanks for answering the poll. Please let me know if there is anything I can help with to ensure that your child is able to complete their work packets despite their lack of internet connection. And again, I can schedule that, attach things to it, or send it right away. And I've been seeing some questions also related to our translation. So you will notice, unfortunately, you can't preview translations before they've gone out because our translation system works separately once the messages have happened. But once they've gone out, next to this message, you can show the translation that the families have received on their end. So in this case, it'll be Spanish, and you'll be able to see the Spanish translation that we sent out. And once families start responding, you'll also be able to see the original message that they sent. But let's say that this translation was messy and you didn't really understand what it said. You could submit a report here, and our human translators that we have hired will kind of take a relook at that and make sure that everything looks good. So that message, because I typed it in English, it won't let you review that. But if I had typed the message in Spanish, you can now review it and say, this was the original message. Keep in mind that sometimes families may type messages with maybe not correct grammar or abbreviations or slang. In that case, the translation system can get a little bit messy, but that's why we have our human translators for. And so I'm going to say submit, and that request have been submitted for one of our translators to look over. So you'll see this orange slanty face here telling you that the translation has been requested. And once that has been reviewed and the translator has said this is a better translation for that, that'll turn green and you'll be able to see an updated translation automatically. And these green check marks do indicate that in the case of this class announcement here, that means that the message has been sent. If you hover over it, you'll be able to see what that means. But for these individual messages, if it's green, that means that the parent has read the message. And we can, at this point, only have read receipts for families using the parent app, because again, if they're receiving messages through text, we don't have access to that information. That's another reason if you really want to ensure that families are able to read your messages, that's another reason that you could encourage them to download the parent app to make sure that they've read the message and that you're able to keep track of that. And in terms of our translation system, we do have a combination, and we are the only platform for family engagement that's investing in not only machine, but also human translation. So as I mentioned, through that review process, we do have human translators on contract that take a look at our messages, but most of our translation is done through a machine learning model, which I won't go through all the details because it's a little bit technical for even me to understand. But that model essentially learns through every message that you and your families are sending. So the model is taking those translations and the translations from our human translators into its memory, and it's making sure that every time a good translation is sent out, we are reviewing that and having that into the system. And we also, in addition to those two methods, have a glossary that is education and context specific for words like parent-teacher conference and IEP and GPA that families may not understand if they're just acronyms. I wouldn't know what an IEP was. So we have inputted into our translation system culturally specific human translations for each of those terms so that families who may not have the best experience or any experience with the US educational system know what those mean. And I have also seen questions about student phone numbers and how many contacts you can have. So in that case, there are a few ways to go about this. First is to click these three dots, and there are two options here. The first is to view the student's profile, which will allow you the options to edit all of their information. And the second is to print the conversation. So if you need to, for any reason, have a record of all of this conversation history, you can print this conversation and it'll download a PDF for you on how to do that. The other option is to go directly to your class. And you'll see in this case, Alma's class only has one student, and that's Jose, and you have one parent listed that is the guardian. If you click edit here, you will be able to edit the student's name. Their gender is completely optional, or their contact information. So you will have the option to add an additional contact. In this case, I'm going to say it's Jose's grandfather. They also speak Spanish, and their phone number is that. You can add up to 5 contacts per each student, and all of those contacts, as soon as you message them, will get that information. But when messaging them, oh, that's a great example of that as well. So this has actually been flagged by our system as a landline. So our system automatically does that to ensure that you're able to communicate with families. And because we're mostly text-based, it will tell you that that's a landline and we're not able to deliver messages to that phone number. It's a great follow-up that you can have with families saying, hey, I noticed that the number that I have for Jose's grandfather is actually a landline. Can you please give me a cell phone number that I can contact them at? And other questions that have been coming in terms of classes and student numbers. So we do currently have a limit of 5 classes. You can add any up to those 5 classes, name them whatever you'd like to, and add students there. And in terms of the total student count, we do currently have a limit of up to 200 students. If for any reason you need to have more than that, we encourage that you ask your school and district administrators to look into talking points for schools and districts, which we are currently offering for free through the end of the school year. In order to print, I do see that question that came in from Christina, sorry. In order to print, you do have to have the web application. Unfortunately, you cannot currently do that from your phone, but the web application and the phone application are tied to the same account. So if you've already set up a mobile application, you can just go onto your computer and sign in with that same email and password or with Google, and you'll be able to access all of the same student, class, and messaging information. Multiple guardians uploaded in the Excel file. That is a great question, and yes. So when you are adding contacts from an Excel file, essentially, if you watch the video template, it'll show you that, but essentially you just create separate rows with the same information. So you could do the same thing here. If I wanted to type in Maria, I can type in the same name, exactly the same here, and different phone numbers, different relationships, etc., and those will all be uploaded under the same student name. And the last thing I want to go over is how to ask for help. So obviously this webinar is hopefully going to be super helpful for all of you, but if you still have any questions that I haven't answered, we do have 2 different resources available. The first is our Help Center. So if you click on that question mark and then on the Resources tab, that will open up this new window for you with all of our frequently asked questions, our Help Center, and all of the articles that we've created. These are created specifically based on questions that we see that teachers are asking often. So if you have a question on videos, which I know some of you do, you can search for the word videos and you'll see that you can send videos, except they must be in MP4 format and can only be a maximum of 5 megabytes based on text messaging restrictions. So if you have any questions, feel free to check out our Help Center there and see if you find the answer to your question. If you haven't been able to find the answer to your question, you do have the option to chat with us. So you can open a chat bucket here and ask a question. The more specific, the better, and the better that we'll be able to help you. So if you maybe say haven't been able to add a student with that phone number to your class, say, I haven't been able to add my student, and then put whatever their name is into my class name. If you can even add photos, that'll be even more helpful for us. That way we can troubleshoot as best as possible. We have been experiencing a really, really high load of teacher requests because all of these educators like yourself are wonderful and are really trying to take efforts into using talking points to communicate with their families. But unfortunately, because we are still a really small team, we haven't been able to get to everyone, but we are working through that to make sure that all educators have the answers to the questions so that they can use talking points. The last portion of this, the web app, will be your notification and profile settings. So if you click on your name down here in the bottom corner, you'll be able to view your profile with the signature that I mentioned that will be attached to every text message that you send to families, your name, your email, and your second language. And this second language feature is super cool. If you are bilingual like myself, I do speak Spanish. you can set a second language in your account, and that will essentially let you bypass the translation system. So if you're messaging any other family that speaks the same language as yourself, you'll be able to skip the translation bucket. So let's say I'm going to select Jose's family, and you'll see that it now gives me the option to skip translation. This means that because I speak Spanish, I can go ahead and type this message in Spanish as well. And it won't have to go through the translation, and that'll automatically go in Spanish. And when families respond in Spanish, that won't be translated back to English. In your profile, you can also change your email. We've had some teachers who maybe you set up your account with your Gmail, but then realize you actually want it tied to your school email, or if you switch schools and have a new email, you can go in here and enter your current email and the new email that you want to change it to. You can also change your password from inside the account, and you can set your notification settings. These notification settings are particularly helpful right now, and Talking Points will automatically default to notify you for every incoming message. That will automatically notify you by email, but if you aren't by your email all the time and would rather those come in as text notifications, you can do that as well. And keep in mind that this does not change the privacy. Even if you enter your phone number here, we still will never share that phone number with families. This just means that the messages are coming to your phone number as notifications, but they're not coming to your phone number from families directly. But if you want to change the notification timing that you get, maybe you don't want to see every single message, but you just want to get a summary twice daily, you can do that as well. But also keep in mind that if, like me, you keep Talking Points open in a tab at all times, our system is going to assume that you're seeing messages as they're coming in automatically. So you won't get those email and text notifications if Talking Points is still open. If you want to ensure that you're getting those, please make sure to either log out or close your tab when you're done using it. Or you can also keep it open if you are monitoring text messages as they come through. The last bucket would be your school information. So you can, in this bucket, edit your school information. Again, if you change schools that you're at, you can delete that, type your own, save it. You can also type in a role. So we do have a few options. I am going to be an ELL teacher in this case, which I know many of you are. And you can also set the grade levels that you work with. And these grade levels will help us with the content that we're developing. We are developing a system that will provide teachers and parents some content suggestions of what types of things you can message your families and what types of prompts, some types of prompts that you maybe will help to go into your lesson planning. And based on the grade levels that you select, we'll make that content more specific to you and more helpful. Obviously, if you're a pre-K teacher, we won't necessarily send you tips on how to talk to families about algebra yet. Maybe, I don't know, you might have some pre-Kers that are doing some amazing things. But that is, yes, there will be, I see a lot of questions coming in about the recording. Fret not, we will automatically send this recording out tomorrow to all of our Talking Points teachers, along with some of your questions and the answers that we're able to give you. And if anyone has any more questions about the web application, now is the time before I transition over to the mobile application. I'm going to give a few seconds for anyone to type. I do see a question that came in earlier that I missed about attachments getting translated. Unfortunately, we are not yet able to translate attachments to messages, but we are working on that. That's been something that has been requested a lot, and we're looking into how to make that possible. Another question about messaging and the responses. So if you send a message out to the entire class, none of the other parents or families will ever get anyone else's responses. Those responses will only come to you. Talking Points essentially functions as a one-on-one texting. So even if you send a message out to all 200 families that you have, all 150 families that respond to that message will only come to you and to no one else. If you teach in a small school district, you are able to select all of the grade levels there. So we have no limit on the number of grades that you can select. If you wanted to select all of them, you could very well do that. Great question. Send a message to all of the parents. Yes, you can. So like I mentioned at the beginning, when you select your recipients, you can select everyone at the same time. In this case, I only have one family in the account, but you can do that very easily. Remove notifications on one device without affecting the same account on another. So the mobile notifications are separate. If you want to still get email notifications, that won't be affected by, let's say, if you change the notification settings for push notifications in your mobile app. Those will be completely functioning separately and will not affect one or the other. One family with 3 different kids. That's a great question, and I think that depends on how you want that to work. So all of our communication typically is broken up by classes. So if you want families to get separate notifications, one for Alma's class and one for the lunch group, I would recommend breaking up that family to have different student names. But if you think it would be more confusing for that family than to just receive one text message with all the same information, then you can enter that information by, let's say, instead of Jose Lopez, I could call this Lopez family, and I could save that like that. And 200 students is across the total 5 classrooms. But as I said, if you need to have any students for more than that, you can ask your school administrators to contact me and to look into asking for talking points for free for the entire school through the rest of the school year, which we are offering to really help educators be able to reach their families in this really crazy time. And I really appreciate the comments about me being a good trainer. This is our first webinar, and we're planning on doing many more. There will be one on Thursday as well that's a little bit less basic on how to sign up, but how to do more kind of involved things and some tips and tricks for using talking points through this very crazy time and online learning. So now I'm going to transition into the mobile application to make sure that everyone has the tools on how to use that as well. Oh, actually, one thing really quickly. I see a question that reminded me of this. One thing that I forgot to mention about the web application, which is possible on the mobile application as well, is you can share classrooms with different teachers. So if you have a co-teacher or you and a teacher share similar students, you can use this button here to invite other teachers. So if you wanted, let's say I want Mark Ferguson, who is one of my coworkers, amazing coworkers here at Talking Points, to also be a teacher on this account, I can add Mark F at talkingpts.org. I'm going to verify that I'm not a robot. I'm not using this as spam, and I'm going to invite him. And automatically, this email will get an invite saying, hey, Alma's inviting you to join her class on Talking Points. Make sure to accept it so that you can access the same contacts. And now, seriously now, I'm going to transition over into the mobile application. Hoping everyone can see that. If not, please let me know in the chat. There we go. And as I mentioned before, there are on the mobile also the same options for signing in and signing up. In this case, since I already created this account on the web and I want them to be linked to the exactly same information, I'm going to choose the sign in option instead of the sign up option. And again, as I mentioned before, if you're getting any error messages telling you that your email is invalid, that's likely because you've already created a Talking Points account and should actually be signing in instead of signing up. I don't want to review my school information now. Maybe I'll do it later. But again, that's the school name, the role, and all of the grade levels that I selected. So in the mobile app, the main home screen will show you all of your class messages that you've sent out. In this case, the only class-wide message that I sent out was the poll asking about internet connection. In this messages bucket over here, you'll be able to see the individual message threads between particular families and be able to respond to those directly. You'll also have your classes tab, which shows the same information about your classes and the students in it, and your profile, which we'll go through at the end. So back into the home tab. This calendar up here that you'll see will show you any upcoming scheduled messages that you have. We don't have any right now, so it'll give you some tips on maybe you should add more contacts to schedule or compose a message, or some other getting started, translation questions, letters that you can send home to families, how to schedule messages, etc. Since I want to send out a message, because I haven't done that yet, I can click here, send your classes a message. It'll automatically have selected everyone, but if I wanted to only send it to Alma's class, I can do that. Here, I'll be able to decide whether I want to schedule it or not. I don't, I'm just going to send that out at this time right now. And you can compose a message. We do also have the suggested message templates here in the mobile application, so you can select one from those. I'm going to praise the students in my class for doing a great job. And you will see that we have these customizable merged fields. So student first name, if that is inputted exactly as such into your message, that means that every family who receives your message will have their first name inputted into that slot. So in this case, Lopez family will have Lopez put into that message. You can also add attachments from your camera or gallery and poll options in the mobile app as well. I'm going to go ahead and send that out. It's been sent. And my other phone just buzzed because it got the message. And I'm going to go ahead and respond to that. And you'll now see that a message has come into your messages bucket here. Again, as I mentioned, because this individual family is responding, they will get the message here. In the individual message threads, you'll also be able to see the same information if you wanted to see the original message that was sent by families. And as you'll notice, the translation request that I submitted earlier now has a green happy face, meaning that it's already been reviewed by one of our human translators, and they have verified that that's a good translation and sent it back to us. If you have classes on the web, but they're not showing up on the app, that is likely because you are signed in with different email accounts with different applications. So please go to your profile in that case to ensure that you're using the same email with both accounts. If a parent deletes the app, that's kind of a tricky question. So good question, but if a parent deletes the app, they will still essentially get messages to the app. If they want to go back to receiving messages through text message, there is a help article that you can find in our help center asking how to get parents back to SMS. But unless they log out of the app before they delete it, the messages will still go into that app, because our system really reads the logins and outs as opposed to whether or not it's on the phone currently. And yes, the webinar is being recorded. Great question. So I've had some questions also about deleting classes and deleting students. So if you go into your classes list here, you can swipe over like you would with your messages to the left, and you'll have the settings option and the delete option. The settings option will allow you to rename the class if you want to name it something more specific, like math section. And Mark has been pending to invite to this class, or if you want to delete it, you could delete it there as well. Saving. And you could do the same thing for students. So on mobile, if you wanted to delete a student, you would also swipe all the way to the left, and you can either view their student information on the gray button or delete it with a trash can. In this case, I want to view the information there. That's the same as we saw on web. So you can click edit, and you can edit the contacts names and delete ones if you need to, or you can send a message there if you wanted to, and that would open the message bucket back up so you can type messages directly into there. On the app, you see the time the message was sent, but not the date. That is a good question. And if you scroll up high enough, it'll show you the date here and all of those. Oh, someone with an iPhone X is unmuted.
Oh, si es que van a haber otros maestros virtuales, Gaby, que no los vas a conocer. De ver si conoces a esos maestros que están hablando ahí.
If you scroll down high enough, you'll be able to see the date that the message was sent, and all of the messages sent on that date will be lumped under the same bucket. So I had messages from yesterday as well. Those messages would show up above that, and it would say the date for that particular message bucket. In terms of pricing, so pricing is completely free for teachers and families. The only pricing restrictions that families may have is if they don't have unlimited text messaging, they may be charged for whatever messages you're sending to them. So that would be another case where you could and should encourage them to download the parent app, which is completely free, and they would be able to access if they have Wi-Fi or data available to them at any time. Seeing whether contact has read your message. Good question again, and it would be the same premise as through the mobile app or the web app, I'm sorry. If there is a green check mark under here that shows that that's read and that that's also read. But again, that will also be able to only be able to be available if families are using the parent app and not the SMS texting. So if this family member was actually using SMS text, it may be that they've read it and we just don't have that information because cell carriers don't send that to us. But again, if you really want to know whether families have and haven't read your messages, you should be encouraging them to download the parent app. Parents can get the app through the App Store and the Google Play Store. They shouldn't, if they're signed into the App Store, they shouldn't need to upload their Apple ID anymore. But the other option there is that first text message that you should be able to send out when you're composing. On the web, we'll have the link here that they can download the app from. And if they click that, it'll automatically detect whether or not they're using Android or iPhone and send them to the appropriate app store so that they can download the app accordingly. And the last bucket here, similar to the web application, is your profile. So here you'll be able to see your name and your email that you've entered. If you click on it, you can set a profile picture that families will see, your name, your email, and again, that second language that I've already set as Spanish. You can also, in the app, change your password, set your notification settings. As I mentioned earlier, we do have different notification settings, whether you're using the web app or the mobile app. So the notifications, if you want to turn them off overall for email, you can do that here as well. But if you just want to turn off push notifications, so you don't want to get those alerts and banners in your phone, you can do that here. And a new feature that we do have is office hours. So if you, during this crazy time, I know for me personally, as you can see, this is my apartment, I've been having kind of a harder time deciding my boundaries since I'm working in my home as well. And if you really want to make sure that families aren't bothering you after a certain time so that you can enjoy quality time with your family, you can set these office hours. And these will be the best times that parents can reach you and you won't receive the message notifications outside of those hours. So I don't necessarily want to receive messages starting at around 9 p.m. going until 6 a.m. And as soon as that's set, any messages that come in during that time will kind of all be lumped into a bucket. Parents will receive a notification telling them, hey, this is outside of your teacher's office hours. And then they will, once those office hours are over, you'll get a message saying you received 10 messages while you were gone. Make sure to check them out. You can open the app and respond to all of those. And in the app, you can also view our support and our help center. So again, those are those articles. As I mentioned, there was a great question about if a parent deletes the parent app, how can you get them back to SMS so that they're receiving your messages? I'm going to search for parent app. Go. And there's a great bunch of articles around the parent app, but the specific one that I'm looking for is not showing up yet. So I'm going to type in SMS as well. It's definitely there. So I am going to go to resources to help parents. Not seeing it right now for the sake of time. I know it's there, but I want to go over this other article on how parents can change their language. So parents who are using the parent app also have the ability to change their language in their own app. So if you've set their language to English, but really they say, I actually want to receive those messages in Spanish, they can follow the steps outlined here to change their language in the app. Again, you can do that for them in the Talking Points app. So if you wanted to change this information, you could do so here, but if they wanted to do so on their end, they could also have that option. If your home page does not have the camera nor gallery, does it have all the last messages that were sent? I believe, Joanne, you are a part of Talking Points for Schools, if I'm not mistaken. In that case, that would be kind of a different function. Can you send a message in 2 languages to a family? Yes, so any language that is set here in Talking Points, let's say this same family actually has multiple languages that they speak. So parent 1 is going to speak Spanish and parent 2 is going to speak Arabic. Automatically, when you send that message, any Talking Points messages, they will all be translated into the language that you have set. So whether that be for your 200 students that speak 100 different languages, or for one family that speaks 2 different languages, that translation will automatically happen to ensure that families are receiving messages in their preferred languages. Can the parent call the number? No, we currently do not support voice calling. That's something that we know that teachers are also interested in, so we are looking into it, but it doesn't seem like that's something that we'll be able to add anytime soon. If you don't have office hours, yes, you should reinstall. That should be an older version of the app, and if you make sure to update to the newest one, you'll have that availability there. Let me see any other good questions that I see there. When we send the invite from your web app, the parents will receive the link to the SMS to get the app. That is correct. As long as you send that first automatic template message that we have there, parents will receive the app, the link to which they could download the app. And a note about these message templates here, just because you've inputted a template, you can definitely update it. So let's say you don't want to say, I'll be sending you messages about my class. You want to say, I want to be sending you messages about your student. You could essentially edit those templates and send them out to suit you the best. So if you didn't want to send any of that other information, only the link to the app, you could delete everything else and send that there as well. How many message templates? Unlimited. You can save any number of templates into your account and have those all at your disposal. How can your whole school get talking points? We should have sent an email out last week with the information on how to submit a request to get talking points for your entire school. Please pass that link along to your school and or district administrators, and we will be in contact with them about how to get talking points for the whole school. To reinstall, to delete the mobile app, you will not lose any of your contacts. If you sign in with the same information, the same email and password, you should be able to sign in and have everything there automatically. But if you want to update to the newest version, you shouldn't have to delete it. You should be able to, in your app store, just click on the app and any updates that are available, and those should be updated automatically. Teachers have talking points. How do parents know which teacher they're contacting? Great question. And again, that is through that teacher signature that you've set. So in your school settings here, you'll see the signature that's set. In this case, it's Miss Flores Perez. So every message that families receive through SMS will say signature Miss Flores Perez : and the message that you've sent. So that'll automatically tell them which teacher they're receiving that from. And in addition, different teachers that are contacting them will come through different phone numbers. So the messages will be able to be separated pretty easily, and the parents hopefully shouldn't be getting confused as to which teacher is contacting them. What is the difference between the free teacher accounts and the paid version? So Talking Points overall for individual teachers is free. In terms of the paid version for schools and districts, that allows for entire schools entire student populations and entire staff populations to access the same account and the same student information. And I, for the sake of time, won't talk about specific pricing for that for the next school year, but as I mentioned, through the end of this school year, we will be offering that completely for free to high-need schools and districts to ensure that the students that really need to be reached during this crazy time will be able to be reached. And parents can select which teacher they want to send a message to, yes. So in their text conversations will show them which teacher that they're messaging. And if they're using the parent app, all of those conversations will be broken up by different teachers and students. It is completely free for up to 200 contacts, and then for larger schools, schools can sign up. Great, thanks for answering that question as well, Sarah. If there are any other questions about either the mobile app or the web app, now is the time with the few remaining minutes that we have. But I'd also like to really thank everyone for joining this great webinar. I know that there were some technical errors, like people not being muted, but I'm really hopeful that this is a format that will be really useful for all of you in the coming weeks. We know that this is a really stressful time, and we as a company, as an organization, and a nonprofit are committed to doing everything that we can to make life as easy as possible for you. So if there's any tips or tricks that you want to share with other teachers, like this is something that I have found very useful, please make sure to go to our Twitter at TalkingPointsEd and tweet at us, and we will make sure to share that with other educators. And we really are a community and hope to build a community. Educators are such fantastic resources, and we're here to support you and support you supporting each other. So thanks everyone so much for joining this, and I'm looking forward to seeing anyone who has any additional tips and questions on Thursday for our webinar. After the video, we will make sure to send this recording out by email to everyone, since we already have your emails from when you signed up for an account. Please look out for that, as well as some tips and tricks that we'll be sharing after this. And thanks so much, all of you. And the time for Thursday's webinar is at the same time, 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.